2026. Werewulf is an open source, stateless provisioning system for managing HPC clusters at scale. It enables administrators to boot and manage compute nodes over the network without local disks, making it quick and simple to deploy everything from small research clusters to massive top 500 systems. Originally pioneering the concept of stateless node management over 2 decades ago, Werewulf version 4 has evolved to integrate modern container technologies, allowing you to provision containerized operating systems directly to bare metal. It's vendor agnostic, highly scalable, and designed to make managing hundreds or thousands of nodes as straightforward as managing just a few, which is why it's become an industry standard backed by OpenHPC and used across universities, research institutions, and enterprises worldwide. So today's conversation starter, we're going to be talking about how OpenHPC runs its tests. And I'm sure the conversation is going to morph into all kinds of other things. So I'm very excited about that. Always, if you have any questions, this is your place, your space, your time. This is your meeting. So raise your hand, ask a question in the chat, do whatever you can. We want to be here to support you. Okay, just so you know, a little intro. I'm Rose Stein. Most of you I know, and I've seen you either at conferences or here. Thanks for being here. I also support the open source project as community manager, and I also work at CIQ. And then we have Jonathon Anderson. He's a technical steering committee lead for the Werewulf project, also works at CIQ, and he's going to be doing project and community updates. So glad that you are back, Jonathon, to do that. You're much better at it than I. And then our special guest opening up the topic of conversation is Adrian Reber. He works at Red Hat and is also on the OpenHPC team. We'll be talking a little bit about testing. And then, of course, we want to get to questions and what's going on with you guys in your cluster werewolf building adventures. Just so you guys know, here is our technical steering committee. If you want to be part of this, you can. We want you, we need you, we love you. I think I stole that from somewhere, but yeah, maybe saying my age here. These meetings are open meetings. They happen, the steering committee meetings, on the first and third Wednesdays of the month via Zoom. The meetings are recorded and also shared on the Werewulf YouTube channel. Just a reminder, we do have a YouTube channel currently, or as when I was making this last week, we had 44 subscribers on YouTube, 660 members in Slack, which is way cool. I think all of you guys are in that Slack. If you're not, let me know. We'll definitely get you an invite. And then, of course, we have an X profile there with 29 followers and Blue Sky. Post and share. Thank you to Gregory Kurtzer, Jonathon Anderson, Christian Gall, Timothy Middlecoop, and Jeremy Seidel for being part of this technical steering committee and keeping this awesome project continuing to iterate and grow and expand and help more and more people. Oops, there we go. Cool. Okay, so it is now time for project and community updates. I think, Jonathon, I will attempt to unshare my screen. Or do you want me to keep this up? Or
No,
do you want,
that's
do you have
fine.
something else?
I've got a couple things. So,
Okay, awesome.
hello everyone. Yeah, I wasn't here for the last one, so I apologize for the parts of this that are review for those of you who were here. Um, but I just wanted to go over that our latest release is 4.6.5, which came out when did this come out? There should be a date on here. Oh, it says last month.
Mhm.
I forget exactly when, but it's pretty recent. We've got a couple. There's more in-depth release notes here as we've been trying to publish in the Werewulf docs on werewulf.org. So I'm looking at those here. The first thing that's really cool to see, if you haven't seen this yet, is this Werewolf control overlay info command. So if we look at an overlay template, so here's the template that generates an ifconfig style uh, if config style configuration file. There we go. That's what I'm trying to say. Um, uh, Contributed by our wonderful Christian Goal is this new overlay info command. So it's got the same parameters as that show, and it uses reflection to look at the contents of the template and see what variables it uses, and then pulls the help text out from the werewolf control command and shows you what options set that value. And then there's syntax in in kind of magic comments, what is, I think it said it's www.doc or then the name of the variable. If you want to add specific documentation to tags or resources that you are looking at in a template that you've developed, that isn't otherwise, isn't a first class field within Werewulf. So this is really flexible. We have the ability to add arbitrary information about each template up here as well, although we haven't gone back and backported that into the existing templates yet. But you can add a lot of kind of self-discovery help text in here. The next thing that I wanted to show is that we have, I think you can see here behind my window here, that we have multi-arch support in the Werewulf client overlay now. So this was the biggest blocker for people wanting to run both ARM and x86 compute nodes from the same Werewulf server in the past. And you could do this, but there was only one Werewulf client overlay, and it was built for, it had a binary in it that was built for whatever architecture the Werewulf server was. Now, we have that. This same one here is whatever architecture your server is, but we also have an explicit AArch64 overlay and x86-64 overlay that we build and distribute on all architectures so that you can do cross-arch booting with a single Werewulf server. There are other things that were already documented for managing node images, in with the Werewolf server across architecture. You could already do that, but this was kind of the last thing that you had to do yourself, and now you don't have to. You just include the right one depending on what arch you want to be building, or sorry, what arch you want to be provisioning. There's one other thing that I wanted to talk about, and that is in Werewolf Dracut. There are, of course, more things in here. Um, but in the past, there was an issue where if you were doing provisioning to disk, so you were using the relatively new support that Werewolf has for during a Dracut boot, it can run Ignition or some other tools if you prefer to lay down a partition table and format partitions with a given file system, and then copy your image to disk rather than to a tempfs in memory. But doing that and having root mounted from a disk then meant later on when your full system is coming up and systemd is running and it tries to run Ignition again to check and make sure that the file system is laid out the way that it wants it to be, that was failing because the disk was in use. That is now fixed. We drop a Sentinel file in /werewolf that lets the later systemd process see, oh, this has already been done. I don't need to worry about it. And so the upshot is that it's now properly mounting other file systems later. That used to be broken unless you did it manually. So just another small little thing. The next release is 4.6.6. Not too many things on the docket here. A few just kind of dependabot fixes that we want to get merged in. Some relatively small fixes. The biggest fix for me is that we want to fix the current inability to unset values, especially like IP formatted values in the command line. You can do it with the edit command, but not with like node set or profile set right now because of some type matching that we're doing. So we're fixing that, but the biggest new thing that we'll be introducing, or that's planned to be introduced in 4.6.6, is TLS support for the web server. So the Werewolf server, among other things, is a small little HTTP server, but that's all in the clear. And generally speaking, this is okay because you're running this on an internal private network. But we want to continue to bolster the security posture of Werewolf, and this is one step towards that. So we've got a pull request in that Christian has put together that is woefully like I'm behind in trying to, or in getting to review this. So hopefully I'll review this and we'll get this merged very soon. But that's probably the biggest blocker, if there is such a thing, for the next release, is getting that reviewed, getting that in as a step towards more encrypted traffic on the network between the Werewolf server and the compute nodes. Um, yeah, and that's this PR right here. So happy to answer any questions about that or show off anything else if people have questions about it, but that's about what we've got for now.
That TLS change, is that just for the API or was that for all communication with the host?
So right now it actually doesn't have the API. So Christian's note there at the top of the PR is a recommendation that I add support for protecting the API with it as well. So right now it's mostly there to protect the transfer of I think the image, but mostly the overlays.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, that'd be an awesome change.
And then I am imagining that, like, in order to do that, we have to have certificates, and I think having those certificates around is going to be a good thing and enable node verification and things like that in the future. So that's why I want to put real time into reviewing it and having a real opinion about it because I think it's going to be foundational for a lot of future work.
Thanks for that good question, Josh, and clarification. Anything else that people want to ask Jonathan about, specifically about the updates on what's coming? Cool.
All right.
Okay.
Thanks, all.
Yeah. Thank you, Jonathan. That was fantastic. Way better than mine. I just fumbled through trying to even say the words on the notes that you left me. It was fun. So now it is time for Adrian. Here you go. There you're right there. There you go. Thanks for coming on camera. I really appreciate that.
Great, Matt.
Yeah. So we're excited. I don't know if you have anything to like share screen about or just gonna
Yeah,
like jump
yeah,
into
I have a
conversation.
couple of
Okay,
slides to
cool.
give an overview.
Do you want to do just like a little intro of yourself and let us know what brought you to be involved with the community as well?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, so I'm as you already said, Adrian Reber. I work for Red Hat. I'm in the kernel team, so my Red Hat work is not really HPC related. And this already brings me basically to the first slide here. OpenHPC is a Linux Foundation project, exists now for, I guess, almost 10 years. As a Linux Foundation project, I think the project is now 11 years old, and it's set up like many Linux Foundation projects, and it also sounds like Werewolf. So there's a TSC, a technical steering committee, and then there's a governing board which does most of the budget things, and the TSC elects a project leader, and I'm now the project leader for I think 2 years now, and I'm doing most of the technical work, and yes, and one thing, for example, if you talk to Chris Simmons, who is also involved in OpenHPC. So one thing about OpenHPC, we don't have anyone who's really working full time on it. So I'm in the kernel team, so I'm working on the kernel or things around it, and the OpenHPC project is a side project, and that's the thing for most contributors in OpenHPC. So it's not a full-time project of anyone. And I guess if people think about OpenHPC, many people think about it being a software stack, and this is of course true. It's a set of RPM packages which we provide on top of different operating systems, different Linux distributions, and the thing is, also, I think many people often focus on the RPM part of OpenHPC, but I think for most of us working on OpenHPC, the RPMs are just something helpful and a good starting point. But what we really try to focus on is the validated documentation. So we have documentation, and in the documentation we basically tell you type this, type that, and to test this we do something which we call a recipe. We pull out all the commands in one big shell script, and we run the documentation for each release. So we actually know what we have in the documentation brings you from a bare metal system to a running cluster. And so the documentation is one of the really important parts from the OpenHPC project, and we try, and the goal is to help people who don't have much experience in running HPC systems to have a starting point, to have some documentation, to have something that works. And also maybe for HPC sites which have experience a lot, but maybe they think having something which is kind of a standard, maybe if you want to call it something like this, so it helps you to have something which is documented and which many people use. So just like you said, with the Warewulf Slack, there's also the OpenHPC Slack, which has over 1,000 of people who are helping each other, and there is a mailing list. So it's also a very large community around the documentation. And just some history about the OpenHPC project. So for 10 years, it existed now. And we had 4 major release branches, and the 1.x branch was based on CentOS 7 and OpenSUSE Leap, then 2.x on RHEL 8 and clones and OpenSUSE Leap, then 3.x on RHEL 9 and clones and OpenSUSE Leap, and OpenOILOG was something new. And 4.x, which is based on RHEL 10 and clones, and which we released last November, is also for RHEL 10 and clones and OpenOILOG. And if I say RHEL 10 and clones, the thing is we build on RHEL and we test on Rocky Linux and Alma Linux. So that's how we try to be independent of the actual operating system. So we take the kind of the original thing where we hope it's compatible with both, and then we run extensive tests on two of the clones at least. To make sure what we have actually works. So this is just an overview. So we are tracking for a couple of years how many data we're downloading, and it's growing. So the last year, I'm not sure this is really that many new users. Maybe this is all just AI bots, but at least it looks good. So it looks like people, something is interested in our repository server. And the same is for the unique number of users. So this is the unique number of IP addresses, which is hitting our repository system. So it's also growing a lot. And if, let's say, at least 50% is AI bots trying to learn something, then it's still a good number what we have there. We're happy with that, with the number of users. And besides that, we don't really have any knowledge who's using it. Like any other open source projects, we don't have any tracking or anything else. So we have a Google form where people can register if they want. So we have a couple of people who registered there, but it doesn't really help us to know who is actually using it. And now coming to the provisioning part of OpenHPC. So OpenHPC has always been a Warewulf-based project, Warewulf 3 over many years. And so the first release was Warewulf 3 based, and XCAT as a provisioning tool. The same was for the 2.x branch. With the 3.x branch, during the lifetime of the 3.x branch, at some point we introduced support for Warewulf 4 in addition to the other provisioning systems, and also we introduced support for OpenShami. So we try to. So one of the taglines of OpenHPC is building blocks for HPC systems. So we do not try to force people into certain tools. We try to give, if possible, selection, and then people should select what fits them the best. So that's why we try to have multiple. That's why we try to have multiple provisioning systems. And with the latest release, we have Warewulf 4, Confluent, and OpenShami, and people can then select whatever makes most sense for them. So our development works like many other open source development. So we have GitHub thing with lots of CI running there. Then the actual build of the RPMs happens in Open Build Service, which builds for many Linux distributions. Then, as I already mentioned, what's important for us are the validated recipes, which are also part of an RPM. So we build the RPM, there are the validated recipes in there. And once this is all done, then we have even more testing based on the recipes. So we, as I mentioned, we have the documentation. The documentation is converted to a shell script, and then we run those shell script on our test clusters. And our testing works something like this. So we have 2 test clusters for one x86 systems and one for ARM systems. And both systems, what we currently have access to is 4 bare metal systems with BMC access. So this makes it a bit difficult for us because we cannot use really, or we don't want to use one of the cloud providers because we actually want to run the tests in an environment like we expect the users to have it. So we're having 4 systems where we can access the BMC. And then once we have installed everything there, then we have even more tests. I will come to the tests that we run a bit later. So our testing works like this. So we either kickstart or use AutoYast, depending on the Linux distribution, to install a head node. Then we install the OpenHPC release RPM and documentation RPM, and then we run the recipes. And we have a lot of different combinations which we are testing, and which also requires a lot of time. So we're testing for each architecture, which is obvious. Then we test for each operating system, which is like 4 different OSs. It's OpenSUSE, Rocky, Alma Linux, and OpenEuler. Then we test on 3 or 4 different provisioners, and like I mentioned before, then we used to test on Slurm and OpenPBS, but with the latest release, we dropped OpenPBS because there hasn't been a release for at least 2.5 years. So now we're, at least for the latest branch, for the 4.x branch, we only do Slurm. And then we test with or without GPU, with or without InfiniBand, and then with or without the intercompiler, because all our packages are built with the latest GCC and also with the latest intercompiler. We do not ship the intercompiler, but we ship binaries built with the intercompiler. And depending on all those combinations, it can be over 20 different combinations of test systems we're running. And we try to have some overview of what we're testing on a web page. And there was a question.
No, sorry, that's just a comment.
We dropped OpenPBS basically because there doesn't seem to be any release publicly. I don't know if they switched to a closed source model or whatever. It's not totally clear. And just let me switch here to my browser. And so I just wanted to highlight here how our testing looks. So for the 3.4 branch, we have actually tested 23 different combinations of our recipes. And this basically means operating system, provisioning tool. So you see here, this was a provisioning for Alma Linux, Confluent with Ethernet, no GPU, and Slurm. And this is one for OpenPBS and with NVIDIA and InfiniBand and with or without the intercompiler. So there's a lot of combinations we're testing because we want to make sure that what we deliver is actually working. And for the 3.4 branch, our total test runtime was 193 hours. And over the whole thing, we run around 50,000 tests. And if we're looking here, we see for most of the different variants, we run around 800, 900 tests. So you see here, those are the tests we're running for each release. And we're testing on different levels. So we're testing, is the compute node actually working we provisioned? And then we test, can we run a job using Slurm or OpenPBS on the compute node? Then we test, are the RPM packages installed? Is the module correctly working? The LMOD-based module, is it loading everything? and then we're compiling something against the compilers we have, against the different MPIs we have, against the different numerical libraries we have. We check that the output of the numerical libraries is actually correct to be what we expect. So we're testing on many different levels to make sure that it works and then that it's also correct. And for the 4.x branch, it looks something like this. So this is now a lot less configurations because we dropped one of the resource manager. It's now all Slurm based. And we also have dropped support for OpenSUSE, which might come back. There was some interest from someone from the community, so maybe for 4.1 or 4.2 we will see recipes on OpenSUSE again. But yeah, the thing is, it's as I mentioned, this just takes a lot of time, and that's why we had to reduce some of the things here. Okay, so this was the testing and the testing result, and the future. What we're currently talking about is we're trying to get rid of old stuff. So we have a lot of Perl scripts we're converting with the help of Claude to Python, and we also have a lot of documentation based on LaTeX, which makes it really hard for people to contribute. And we are currently working on converting this to Markdown. This is also happening with the help of Claude, and it actually works really good. And the next releases might be around June. We usually try to target ISC and SC as something to do a release on, and this will probably have a release for all of our active branches. And with that, this is all the things I wanted to say about OpenHPC, and especially the testing and how much effort we put into testing. And if there are any questions, happy to answer them.
Wow, that was very informative. Thank you, Adrian. I'm glad that we're recording this because this is such good information, because I often get that question, well, what exactly is OpenHPC and how do I use it and what do I do? That number of where it like was the crazy expansion, you're like, it's probably mostly bots. I don't know, because I hear about OpenHPC all the time, but maybe it's just the world that I live in. But yeah, that was great. Thank you. I know Jonathan just put in the chat there. He had not previously noticed that OpenPBS was dropped in OpenHPC 4. So yeah, that is interesting. I'm sorry, I don't remember if you gave the an
explanation. I mentioned it that we had to drop it because there was no release and it's not clear what development model they are going to, or I don't know. It seems there's some activity on their GitHub ongoing, but no release, and so yeah, without a release, it doesn't make much sense. But the good thing is, for at least from our point of view, it's not like we dropped it and we will never touch it again. We dropped it, and if there's interest, there's no problem for us to reintegrate it again. Shouldn't be too difficult.
Yeah. Thank you for that added context as well. And it really highlights what a great community the Werewulf community is, how it's, like actively being developed. And it's kind of cool to see Werewulf even version 3, like over the years, it's like Werewulf is there, Werewulf is there, Werewulf is there. And now we're in Werewulf 4. So I know that was probably a big jump from 3 to 4 for you guys. So thank you for doing that.
Yeah, there were a lot of discussions, and because it's not, you cannot automatically migrate from one of the other, and so there was some discussions going how we should handle this, and at some point we decided to just introduce it as an additional tool with no real connections to the other one. Yes, yeah.
Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, we might have even wanted to call it something different, but it's got the same people working on it, so I guess there's history there. Yeah, it was very exciting in the Werewulf community when we heard that OpenHPC was now officially supporting Werewulf 4 version 4. So yeah, thanks for that. I see your hand, Jonathon Anderson.
To Timothy, basically from the TSC. He's we had put a lot of work in it to make it work on OpenHPC. So we're happy for his work there.
Yes, thank you for that call out for Timothy Middlecoop as well. He has been instrumental in all things Werewolf. So thank you. Yes, Jonathan.
So anyone that works with me on the werewolf committees will know that I want to do everything and have very little time to do the things I want to do. But let's imagine that I or someone like me wanted to get involved with some of these, like getting rid of old stuff, updating documentation, or even just like I've done a deployment with Werewolf using the OpenHPC guide, and I'd like to make a contribution there. What's the best way to get involved and start contributing to the project without, I don't know, without breaking things?
Oh, so yeah, so I'm always saying open a pull request and we'll guide you through. So currently it's challenging because you have to know LaTeX and many people do, but not everybody does, and so it's not easy, and that's one of the reasons we switched to or want to switch, or we started to switch to Markdown just to make it easier for people to contribute. And so basically what we did over the last 3 years was just to modernize OpenHPC at many places, so that because before we didn't have any CI running on GitHub, it was all running like 3 months later on some separate system. So we try to have just, I guess it's like any other open source project, have CI, make sure you get the feedback if you break something very early. So at this point, I feel like if you just open a pull request and provide a change, we can see pretty quickly if it works or not. So it sounds, or yeah, no, I'm biased. It sounds easy to me.
Yeah, fair enough. Thank you. Are there lots of different repositories for OpenHPC? Like, do you have to find the right one to contribute into, or is there one big,
No.
massive OpenHPC repository?
It's basically just one. So we have one additional. So I mentioned where we do the kickstart and AutoYast and all the things with Ansible to provision the test systems. This is also open. This is a separate one because it's more or it's even called OHPC infrastructure because it's infrastructure related. So if you actually want to take a look how we do the testing, it's all there. And but if you're not running one of our test clusters, it's probably not that interesting to look at it. But all the other things are all in one repository. It's a single repository.
Thanks.
Hello.
Go ahead. Hi.
Hi there. Adrian, I think I would like to ask, where is, to your understanding, the current technical debt, or if there is any wish list announced somewhere? If you have that in a URL, for instance, you could share it here in the chat, or just let us know.
If there's a wish list for OpenHPC or Werewolf?
I will say for the integration from my point of view, but feel free to reply for OpenHPC in this instance.
Okay, so the interesting thing is I'm using all those provisioners to test, but I'm not using them very deeply. So I'm using them at a level which is in the recipe and it works. So I'm not really working with them any provisioner any deeply. So for me, it's really hard to say because I'm not doing day-to-day stuff with them. So I'm using it, but I'm not really using it. So I cannot say if anything is missing there.
So maybe more to the point, is there like an issue tracker or something that OpenHPC uses for work that's pending within the project? So like I'm looking at the OHPC repository and there's like two issues open, so that makes me think there's probably somewhere
because
else.
we're trying to fix them. If there's an issue, we fix it, and so it's we're trying to have inbox 0, something like this. So yeah,
fair enough.
So the interesting thing is so we have two types of requests. So there's the users who have a problem, something doesn't work, and sometimes they open an issue, and then I'm usually saying you should ask on the mailing list because this is not something which is a problem with OpenHPC. It's just something which is specific to your cluster and for your use case, and this is not something at least we do on the OpenHPC level. So that's the thing we don't do end user support in GitHub issues, because that happens on a mailing list or on Slack, and this has worked pretty good. And for features, I try to be just reactive and fast to get them integrated if people are there. So and it's not, yeah, it's not like, it's not it doesn't feel like there are big things missing, or because I don't know, it's people don't complain, so I don't know, but yeah, so if there would be something, there would be an open issue, we would try to fix them, but so far, no, nothing.
Is there a place where up here on the screen, lots of Perl script and the docs being in LaTeX, is there a place where the progress of those modernization efforts is being tracked that people could jump in?
Okay, so this was, so actually I'm working with Timothy also on that. He was also interested on getting this fixed, because he also doesn't like the LaTeX documentation. So we had an open pull request for a couple of weeks, and at some point we said we will just merge it in parallel to the existing LaTeX documentation, because for us it's sometimes it's easier if you can work on the repository, not on a pull request. And so currently the idea for that one is we're doing an in-tree parallel documentation. And yeah, you're right. So this would be something which could be tracked publicly, because currently we have just converted 3 of our recipes to Markdown. Yes, you're right. This could be tracked in a more transparent way. So this currently mainly happens between me and Timothy and the TSC. So it's a bit of a closed circle, but so far there hasn't been much interest from the outside. So it was working for us in that way.
So curious, Adrian, as well, your work with doing the testing specifically with Warewulf. What have you found that you really enjoy about the Warewulf project as you are putting things together and building clusters and making sure that the documentation is accurate?
Yeah, so I usually, if something doesn't, I ask Timothy.
So what you like about Warewulf is that Timothy knows.
So that's kind of his part of OpenHPC. So he makes the, so recently there was the 4.6.5 update. So he opened a pull request. I merged it. He usually tests it on a couple of simple VM systems he has, and so. And it's like, if you have a couple of contributors, at some point you just start to trust them. And so if I know something comes from Timothy, I know he tested it, I can merge it. If all our tests are green, and once it's merged, then I can just run it on our test cluster, and then I also see, yeah, it still works with 4.6.5. And if it wouldn't work, my go-to would again be to talk to Timothy and try to figure out if he has already seen this, and so he's kind of my proxy to the Warewulf community, because yeah. So I guess this is kind of, so he is basically the reason why OpenHPC and Warewulf currently work so well together, because he has something in both projects, and he's kind of the connection point for us.
Yeah. That's wonderful. Again, thank you, Timothy, for that. Just so that you guys know, I know I see you, Jonathon. I was just going to put this in the chat for everybody if you are interested. OpenHPC does have a great Slack channel, and inside their Slack there is a Warewulf 4 channel that we're all in as well. So, thanks. Hey, Jonathon.
Yeah, from the other side, I have really appreciated the collaboration between Warewulf and OpenHPC, even just specifically for the testing aspect. So the testing that we do within the project, we kind of like what Adrian's describing, we all have like a VM that we run Warewulf on and test things by hand. But within the project, our CI is a lot more like just unit tests. It's not quite unit tests, but it's not building up a whole infrastructure and running full provisioning tests in it. All of that is by hand. And it's been very good to be able to trust that if we really broke something, OpenHPC would see it because you're doing all of the work of spinning up virtual environments and provisioning things with Werewulf in them. And there have been conversations that we've had within Werewulf of whether we should be doing that, but we don't want to duplicate that effort. So this is where I want to see. I know Tim is obviously very invested in the OpenHPC project already, but I'd like to get more familiar with collaborating over there also, so that we're you know helping each other as much as we can because we're getting a lot of value out of the collaboration already.
Yeah, so at some point I actually was thinking about there's this where you can have GitHub self-hosted runners. So I was thinking about kind of integrating our cluster as a self-hosted runner to make sure it runs after each, I don't know, merge or pull request or whatever. The thing is just there's always the chance. So the thing is you shouldn't have self-hosted runners run on public repositories where random people can submit anything, and then that runs on your self-hosted runner. You don't want to do that for one reason, and but the other thing is also it just takes time, and then it's not like 2 hours, but at least because we do the provisioning of the head node completely using Kickstart. So that's like, I don't know, 15 minutes, and then provisioning the compute nodes, maybe 10 more minutes until, and BIOS is also slow, and then it just takes forever. And so I don't know. It's not a technical challenge. It's more like it would break the workflow. So that's why I haven't done this yet. But
yeah, I would think that the level of integration testing you're doing would be difficult to advocate for having be a pull request triggered event.
Yeah.
From a security standpoint, at least what I've been seeing with the Werewulf project is that if you get a PR from someone that's not affiliated with the project, it does hold those and wait for an authorized committer to come in and approve them for running. But it's still a security thing if that person has to review it before they run it. So, there's always a chance something's snuck in there. But yeah, it makes sense to me that running an integration run that you have would be a manual step.
We are definitely open for other questions or comments about Werewulf in general, provisioning, kind of the stack that OpenHPC uses and chooses. Any questions you have for, or if you just want to share? I think I'd be curious as to who, I think everyone's at least heard of OpenHPC here, probably. But I'd be curious if someone maybe hadn't heard of it, if this is total news. Do you think that's possible? Maybe.
I think it'd be unusual.
I think it would be unusual. But you never know. I mean, if it hasn't crossed your path, it hasn't crossed your path,
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Could always happen. We at least know from our booths at SC and ISC, sometimes there are people who never heard of it. So it's probably depends on your bubble, in which bubble you are, and then.
Well, Rose asked a positive question earlier. I'll ask a slightly more negative leaning question. So, what can the Werewulf project be doing? What is missing from the collaboration that you'd like to be seeing? How can we support OpenHPC more, or how can we be better working together?
Yeah, I think as long as Timothy is invested in all of this, it works really good, because as I said, he's working on both sides. If we see something which is not working, he opens a pull request on the Werewulf side to get things fixed, to get the image adapted, to make it working, so that it works on for OpenHPC. And he's also the one who's bringing us the newest package to OpenHPC, adapting the spec file and the documentation to updates you've done. So with 4.6.5, there was something around DNS mask, which he adapted in OpenHPC. So Timothy is the solution for everything.
I love that.
And as I said, I'm not an active user of any of the provisioning tools. So it's, for me, it's, I know the commands, what to do and how to use them, but it's not, I don't run it every day. I don't have day-to-day things I have to do. It's I do just an installation, and if it's working, then I'm happy, and I usually don't touch it. So and this is with all the provisioning systems we're using.
Yeah.
I don't really know any of them, but I'm using all of them.
Yeah. You know what, that really highlights the value of communities like this, where you guys, you know, the users of these things, these projects out, you know, in the wild is what I like to call it. How important it is that you come back to the people who are developing it, you know, whether it's at OpenHPC or the Werewolf community or any of the open source projects that you are part of, or even, you know, the you know, software that you use, like those engineers too at that company, they also need your feedback. So anytime that you can come in and you know, do some kind of a, you know, a question and ask, what did you call it, a pull request? I don't even know what if that's the right terminology, but anytime you can come in and say, hey, this is what the actual experience is, like you think you built something cool, but it's actually doing this in this situation, you know, this use case, and then it continues to help all of us iterate on the project and make it better. So I think sometimes people feel a little bit nervous. They don't want to, like, you know, bug somebody, but it's not bugging. It's part of the process.
Yeah. So one of the things we like in the OpenHPC project, and this is kind of what happens with Werewulf 4 and OpenHPC. We like to have the upstream projects come actively to us and say, we have this update and we can create this pull request, and we have a couple of packages where the upstream maintainers are actually also always doing the updates. Like for easy build, the easy build maintainer always comes to our GitHub and opens the pull request when they release something new. There's Score P, some library, they also maintain it to make sure it's up to date. And the Werewulf community does this. Also, we always get the latest versions there. And so this is kind of the collaboration I love to see from the community there. So because at some point, somehow, I guess I can manage it to do it all, but sometimes I'm missing important information, and so it's easier if the upstream maintainer is just there, and that's what happens with Werewolf 4 for us. So
Yeah, agreed. Thank you for that reminder as well, that it goes both ways.
yeah.
Yeah, appreciate that.
Hi, this is Sumit. One quick question from Adrian or Jonathan. Though I'm not using at the time of OpenHPC or Werewolf at right now, but in previous my job I use OpenHPC. So you mentioned that in the OpenHPC version 4 or OpenHPC version 3, based on Red Hat or Rocky 9, or so why we are making like this, that OpenHPC 4 based on Red Hat 9, that means you cannot use with the Red Hat 9 or you cannot use with the Red Hat 8. So why we are making a version just with the particular tied with the Red Hat 9 or Red Hat 10? Why not we cannot use the with the Red Hat 9, the Werewolf for OpenHPC version 4?
So I'm not sure I totally got your question. Is it about why we have different releases and you cannot use a package?
My question is that you mentioned that OpenHPC version 4 based on Red Hat version 10. So
Yes, yeah.
that means we cannot use OpenHPC 4 with the Red Hat 9. Is that correct?
Yes. Okay. So maybe this is something. Okay. So OpenHPC 4 just means we build all the packages based on RHEL 10, just to have the binary compatibility, because there are certain libraries there, and you can only build it on 10 and only run it on 10 and clones. But this doesn't mean that the software we ship in 3.x is older. So we ship the same version of OpenMPI, we ship the same version of GCC and Werewulf 4 in 3.x. It's just built against different operating systems because of dependencies on the libraries with which the operating system comes. So glibc, or there's even I don't know, Munge for Slurm and HWlog, and all those libraries, they change between the releases, and so the binaries wouldn't run because the shared object names just don't exist. So the linker wouldn't find the shared objects, and it would just fail. So we have to rebuild it for each release. We have to rebuild it for each OpenSUSE and OpenEuler because they're all different. So, and it just doesn't work if we don't rebuild it. But it doesn't mean that it's older. You're right, for the 2.x branch, we don't put too much effort anymore in it because we're focusing on the newer ones. But if there would be some request from the community, we need something updated also on the 2.x branch, which is RHEL 8 and clones based, then we would do it also on 2.x. So it's older, it's just built for a different operating system. Does it make sense now?
Yeah, got it. Thank you.
Okay, I think we could probably go on and on because I have like 7 other questions, but I think it's probably a good time to let everybody go back to whatever they were doing. I do, Adrian, first of all, thank you. Thank you so much for all the work that you're doing on the project and that it's in your spare time. Thank you for collaborating with Timothy and the Werewulf project and all the other projects. It's quite amazing. Yeah, we got some little hand clapping there. Really appreciate all your time and your energy and coming here and sharing with us. Now you guys know where to find him. You have that Slack channel for the OpenHPC. You know his name. You can ask him any other questions that come up in between now and when you go, oh yeah, I know where to go to find this answer. If you want to be part of that project, it looks like they're looking for people to help out too. So appreciate that both on the Werewulf side and the OpenHPC side. I do have one little housekeeping thing. Bill, you sent me an email and